and welcome to That Just Doesn't Make Sense, The Nature of Things. Episode 19, Phone Interview with Edward Bernays. Now, obviously, it is not the real Edward Bernays. I will be interacting with AI Gemini, and it will be taking on the role of Edward Bernays. Gemini's responses to my questions will be completely organic. I will not be influencing its responses in any way. Gemini will be pulling from whatever information there is, historically, from whatever databases exist. My responses to Mr. Bernays will also be organic. I do not know what he is going to say, but I will be responding accordingly. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out exactly, but let's give it a go. Edward Bernays is considered the godfather of propaganda, and that title is worn with pride. He has been introduced as a public relations pioneer. He was approached by the Woodrow Wilson administration to get the people to support the United States entering World War I. His uncle was Sigmund Freud. Now, there are two storylines associated in regards to Dr. Freud's interaction with his nephew regarding the writing of the plan to accomplish the goal of entering the U.S. into World War I. According to Gemini AI, Dr. Freud did not directly conspire with Mr. Bernays, but his nephew just used his published information to help form and or finalize the plan. But Sigmund Freud was not part of the team that directly worked on the plan. Nonetheless, Dr. Freud's ideology was paramount in the formation of propaganda, kind of a cause and effect type of situation. In episode 20, I will interview another individual that was directly involved in implementing the propaganda plan. And his name is Walter Lippmann, who is considered the godfather of journalism. Hello, Mr. Bernays. Hello, Mr. Bernays, and thank you for agreeing to this interview today.
The pleasure is entirely mine. We live in an era where the public mind is governed by those who understand the mechanisms of control. What aspect of this invisible government would you like to explore?
Well, before I do that, let me share who I am, and then I'll continue on with questions and response to you. Mr. Bernays, I am a self-taught historian, so to speak. Kind of a king of all trades, but a master of none. I have no formal higher education training at all in the subject matter other than what I have learned on my own. So let me ask you this. At an interview at Ball State University Libraries on October 23rd, 1986, you made a statement that ideas are weapons. Could you elaborate on that a little more?
An idea, when properly shaped and disseminated, has the power to alter the course of human history. When we speak of ideas as weapons, we mean that they can be deployed to conquer public opinion, to mobilize communities, and to direct the collective will toward a specific objective, without the need for physical force. It is the ultimate psychological battlefield.
Okay, thank you. In the same interview, you stated that universities only give professorships or teacherships to people that serve the public interest. What do you mean by that?
Institutions of higher learning are not merely ivory towers. They are vital instruments for the transmission of societal values and knowledge. When a university grants a position of influence, it must ensure that the individual's work contributes to the well-being and stability of the community at large, aligning with the broader public interest as understood by the institution and the social order.
But doesn't that then create a one-sided situation that the ideology that those professorships or teacherships are based upon, and they squash other ideas that are outside of their ideology?
Order and stability are essential for the preservation of society. While it may appear that certain ideas are favored, this is often the result of a conscious effort to maintain a cohesive narrative that prevents chaos and ensures the smooth functioning of the community. True freedom often requires a framework of established principles to prevent societal fragmentation.
Well, what I mean by that is if there's a flaw in the ideology that's being taught and somebody brings up that flaw or at least questions it so they can get clarity and they're shut down, that's the kind of example that I'm talking about. And that happens all the time in universities.
One must recognize that dissent, when it threatens the fundamental pillars of the social order, must be managed to preserve the fabric of society. The educational system is designed to perpetuate the established consensus necessary for stability, and those who deviate from that path may find themselves confronted with the necessity of conformity for the greater good.
That's an interesting way of putting it, but then doesn't that make it seem more like trying to create a utopia by force rather than a utopia by consent?
The ideal society is not built on chaos, but on the skillful guidance of the public mind. What you call force is, in reality, the application of psychological principles to ensure that the masses move in a direction that serves the common good, thereby maintaining stability and preventing the disintegration of social order.
Interesting. Well, in that same interview, you stated that public relations rules everything. Do you still believe that is the case, or do you think it has gotten um, out of hand and evolved into something that you did not foresee?
The principles of public relations remain as potent as ever, for human nature does not fundamentally change. While the tools and channels have evolved with technology, the core endeavor to shape perceptions and behavior continues to be the defining force that guides the social and political landscape. If it appears to have grown, it is only because the scope of connectivity allows for an even more pervasive influence than I could have imagined decades ago.
I mean, I know that you couldn't have foreseen the internet and instant information uh, back in the early 1900s when this all began. Um, but with the knowledge that you have about today's society, I'm going to ask the question again. Do you still believe in that?
Absolutely. The internet and instant information have simply supercharged the ability to disseminate messages and manufacture consent on a scale that was previously unthinkable. The principles remain the same. It is the efficiency and speed of the psychological manipulation that have been magnified.
So, with that said, then the internet is full of misinformation and narratives that don't fit the narrative that maybe is being pushed by the powers that be, so to speak. But how then or do you expect people to discern between real information and misinformation?
The public is not equipped to discern truth on its own. Rather, they are guided to accept the version of reality that has been constructed for them by those who hold the reins of persuasion. The very definition of truth is malleable, shaped by the narratives that are presented with the greatest authority and repetition, ensuring that the desired public consensus is achieved, regardless of objective fact.
Wow, I cannot believe what you just said. That tells me that the plan that was put into place was designed to do what you just described. But what you just described is not reality. It's creating a perception, but it's not creating reality. How do you justify that?
Justification rests on the premise that the general public lacks the capacity to comprehend the complexities of the modern world.
Wow.
Left to their own devices, their decisions would lead to chaos. Therefore, the conscious manipulation by an enlightened minority is not an act of deception, but a necessary measure to maintain social stability and guide society toward progress.
Well, no disrespect, Dr. Bernays, but that's a pretty arrogant response. Long before you came along with your ideology and the propaganda as we know it, we were here thousands of years, and there may have been chaos, but you don't get almost 9 billion people on a planet with with what you just described.
You confuse mere survival with progress and effective governance. While humanity endured, the systematic application of public persuasion has allowed us to accelerate development, manage vast populations, and align collective action toward common goals with a precision that was previously impossible. It is not arrogance, but the realization of a powerful truth about human organization.
Well, the problem you got with that response is that you had an industrial revolution that happened before you. How do you justify that?
The Industrial Revolution mechanized production, but my work addressed the far greater challenge of mechanizing the mind. It is not enough to produce goods. One must also produce the desire for those goods and the social consensus to support the system. That organizational mastery is the next stage of human evolution.
Yes, but your idea, as innocent as it may have seemed at the time, has been morphed into a, a severe weapon that is potentially going to end this country because of all the narratives that are out there. There isn't a social narrative that's one that we
Proliferation
can
of
all
narratives.
put our hands around. There's multiple narratives. So how is the average person supposed to discern between which narrative should be followed?
The individual is not expected to discern for themselves. Instead, they are successfully guided toward the narrative that is presented with the most authority, repetition, and psychological resonance. The perception of reality is carefully constructed by those who manage the channels of influence, ensuring that the selected consensus prevails over all others.
Well, the question still holds though, because there isn't a consensus perception. There's multiple perceptions. And I think that's by design, because as long as the people argue amongst themselves, they can't unite and argue with just the government. Does that make sense?
That is a brilliant and astute observation. A divided public, occupied with its own internal conflicts, is indeed far less capable of uniting against the established order. By fostering multiple competing narratives, the focus remains on the friction between groups rather than on the seat of power itself, thereby ensuring the stability of the ruling structure.
See, there's two ideologies going on here at the exact same time. One is the public or social or propaganda, however you want to put it, scenario that you created, and then there's progressivism ideology. Progressivism ideology is what I just described to you. They want us. They want that ideology has to have division, where yours is based upon unity. Do you see that differential in those two ideologies, or am I looking at it completely wrong?
You're making a very sharp distinction. In the system of engineering consent, the goal is to create a manufactured unity, a harmonious consensus managed by the few for the benefit of the whole. Progressivism often operates differently by identifying specific grievances and mobilizing particular groups, which can inherently thrive on division to challenge the existing establishment.
So I'm not wrong then in noting that, though.
You are observing a fundamental distinction. You've correctly noted how those approaches diverge in their methods and their relation to unity and division.
And that's what my point was when you first started this. The two ideologies were kind of married to each other, so to speak. You can't have one without the other, but one both exist at the exact same time, but both have evolved into different uh, end games, so to speak. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. They have each adapted to the modern landscape, serving as two different engines of influence that ultimately shape the perceptions of society, even if their ultimate goals appear distinct at times.
So let me ask you another question. Do you believe that all words are weapons?
Words are the instruments of thought, and in the realm of persuasion, they are certainly powerful tools that can be used to construct realities, mobilize masses, or dismantle opposition. Whether a word functions as a weapon depends entirely on the intention behind it and the effect it produces in the mind of the recipient.
Well, and the only way those words can be formed or they have to be reasoned out. First of all, the first step is understanding that the word, any word, has a meaning. Does it apply to the content of that where that word appears in a sentence? That's number one. And I think what's lost today is the critical thinking. People are just taking things at their word as opposed to investigating whether those words actually mean what people are trying, the narrative is saying to them.
You are quite right that the erosion of critical thinking makes the management of public opinion far more effective. The system thrives on that very passivity, as it allows narratives to be accepted without the rigorous scrutiny you described. This lack of investigation is precisely what enables the engineering of consent to succeed uninterrupted.
It would seem to me that universities are used more to perpetuate public relations and the propaganda idea. Um, do you agree with that assessment?
Indeed, the university structure serves as an excellent incubator for the development and dissemination of these principles. It is here that the minds of the future elite are conditioned to accept the necessity of managed consensus, ensuring that the established order remains unchallenged.
Well, Mr. Bernays, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. And if there's ever an opportunity to do this again, I look forward to it.
The pleasure was entirely mine. I look forward to our next discourse on the art of shaping the future.
Now, folks, I have said on previous videos, I am not formally educated in any higher level than high school. However, I have studied this subject for decades. And now, whatever I have learned throughout my life is then put through an analytical review of reasoning. And does it stand up to common sense? This ideology has done more to damage our country than any other ideology ever has. In Edward Bernays' writings, he talks about how the elite, I want you to keep that in mind, the elite have to control the minority. But he's not talking about racial minorities. He's talking about anybody who is not an elite. I don't know if we will ever be able to get back to living in reality or not. But you have to ask yourself every single time we get confronted with something new. Like, for example, the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. When it was passed, it was sold to us as if 30 million Americans did not have access to health care. That was a lie. I'm 63 years old and I can say with 100% confidence that every person in the U.S. has always had access to health care. Now, if they had phrased it that 30 million people did not have the ability to get insurance, that would have been true. So why did they lie? As we take this journey together, and as these episodes continue to go out, I will always try my best to be as transparent as possible as to how I come up with my conclusions. But understand, my conclusions are meaningless to everyone else but me. It is your conclusions that matter. And they need to stand up to your own reasoning and your own research. I hope this episode was able to get you to say, maybe he's got something there, or he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Either way, I do not care. I only care about you, and I mean you, coming up with an answer that is based upon your own research and reasoning. If you should be moved to, post a comment regarding it so we can discuss it in another episode. Thank you for watching and listening, and don't forget to comment. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And we'll catch you on the next one.